and here he comes out to the ring. Naofumi Iwatani, the martial artist out of Japan. He is a lethal striker, folks, a lethal one. And he is going up against the champ of the welterweight division, Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare, Usman. Naofumi Iwatani has come from Japan to the States to fight. Finally, he climbed up the ranks, and now he's here for his title shot. This martial artist has a background in wrestling, but mostly a background in jiu-jitsu, karate, and various other styles. Folks, this will be a fight for the ages. Let's see what they got, and let's give it off to the announcer. This fight is scheduled for 5 rounds in the welterweight division for the UFC's welterweight championship of the world. Introducing first, fighting out of the blue corner, a mixed martial artist weighing in at a 170-pound limit and standing 5'9". Naofumi Iwatani. The crowd goes wild. Everybody has been waiting for this one man to step up to the plate. The fact that he has this miraculous idea of how to beat the Nigerian Nightmare Kamaru Usman. Will he be able to do it? All the crowd is waiting in anticipation as the announcer continues on. He points at the champion and begins to say that it's fighting out of the red corner, Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian Nightmare, a wrestler out of Nigeria. Kamaru Usman is an unstoppable force. But Naofumi seems to be the only person that can really stand up to this monster, to the freak of nature that is Usman. They go to the middle of the ring and the ref begins to tell them the rules, saying if they want to touch gloves, touch them now. They touch gloves and back up to their corner, ready for a scrap, ready for the fight of his life. Naofumi Iwatani stands there in wait for that bell to ring and for the referee to tell them that they're all set to go. Are you ready? Are you ready? Get it on! They both step to the middle of the ring, but as he does, he sees something glowing behind his opponent. He sees, is that a phone? A picture? What is that? As he sees it, as they throw their first punch, he teleports away. Naofumi is gone. Now in a medieval setting, seemingly a medieval-like prison. But he looks to his left to see 3 other people with weapons on them. A spear, a bow, a sword. He's confused to see this, but it looks like they were sent here as well. He looks at his hands, but there's nothing there. There's 2 gems though in both of his fists, but they quickly disappear and go right to his chest. It seems like a gem is in his chest, just like the weapons these other people are holding, and he's physically and mentally destroyed by this. He's confused. What is going on? Why is there a gem in my chest? What is happening? That's until these noblemen, these royal guards for the king, approach and say that they are the cardinal heroes, the ones that were summoned, the spear, the sword, the bow, and the shield? They're confused. This man, he has no weapon. He has nothing on him. He knows of the gem in his chest, but they don't. They only see him and he has no weapon. They're confused to say, and they begin to say that maybe he didn't come with a weapon. They explain that he's supposed to be the shield hero, the legendary shield hero, but he doesn't have a weapon. They're confused to see this and say that they need to speak with the king immediately, and the other 3 heroes argue, saying that he better offer them obviously rewards if they want the help of these heroes, unless they want to have a problem. Obviously, this will be quickly sorted out, and they approach the king. The king begins speaking and begins talking about what they need to be doing. The waves of catastrophe are upon them. This demonic invasion will be a problem. And Naofumi is confused by this demonic invasion. Last he remembered, he was fighting for the UFC's welterweight championship. what is this? He's baffled by this, and the king then looks at Naofumi, saying that it seems like he was sent here with nothing, with no weapon. He might not be a hero, and he apologizes for wasting his time and asks if he was born here, or maybe it was an accidental summon that something happened. And Naofumi says that he was definitely not born here, and he was in the midst of fighting somebody before this. And they ask him, what does he mean by fighting? He explains that if this isn't his world, well, in his world, it was as if he could fight these people in an octagon. It was for money, for sport. And they ask if it's like gladiator arenas, and he says you could think of it like that, but it's more of a formal state. He says that he knows various martial arts, ranging from jiu-jitsu to karate and various other things, and they're shocked to hear this, thinking that someone would be this skilled but not have a weapon. The rest of them scoff at this, the other three heroes, saying that if he doesn't have a weapon, he might not be useful anyways. And he says that that's just not true, that he could disarm all of them in an instant if he so choose to do so, and they think that he's bluffing, but even Naofumi knows he's not. But with all that said and done, they don't know really what to do with Naofumi. They say that he is technically one of the heroes they summoned, but the chances of him being taken seriously are practically zero. He doesn't have a weapon, and Naofumi says that's fine. He does things on his own anyways. He usually has coaches, but other than that, it's all on his own. The king says that he'll spread the word to the rest of the people to see if maybe anybody will join his party, but eventually that doesn't happen. But the difference is in this: he speaks with the other three heroes about the video game aspect of this world, and he learns that it's very similar to a video game he plays in his other world. It seems very similar actually, and he's played the game on multiple occasions, so luckily he has some general aspects of this world. He doesn't know everything, just like them, they don't know everything either, but he does know a good amount. But even with that said, nobody's gonna want to join a hero with no weapon. Why would they? There's no protection in that. But when they arrive in the castle and they begin to divvy off the people, again, nobody joins his party. Nobody at all. Naofumi is forced to go on his own to try and train, immediately heading out to this giant field, seeing these small monsters, and when they fly at him, he punches them, and immediately they're destroyed. Actually, they're poofed into ashes, it seems, and he collects them and puts them in his gem, which is in his chest, which he says is kind of odd because it's like he's storing these fragments of these beings in his chest cavity, which is kind of weird, but that's beyond the point. Naofumi does have some success destroying these monsters, and frankly has a decent amount of ease in terms of killing the other monsters. It actually seems that when he is doing hand-to-hand combat and not having an actual weapon in his hands, his stats are they're boosted. He looks at his stat sheet to find that there is a ton of boosted stats. It's actually a 2x boost when he doesn't have any weapons in his hands. He even tries it. He goes to a local blacksmith and talks to the man and asks if he can just pick up a weapon to see what would happen. He does so, and instead of it shocking him, rejecting it, it actually just minuses his stats. Instead of a 2x multiplier, it's a multiplier of 0.5, making him a lot weaker. He asks the man what his name is, and he explains that his name is Erhard, and he introduces himself, says that he's supposedly one of the heroes. And Erhard says he seems to be one of the heroes that doesn't have a weapon. And he says, yeah, he's the only hero that doesn't have a weapon, unfortunately, but his fists are his weapon. His entire body is. In his other world, that's what it was. He was a weapon. And he's confused to hear this, but even Naofumi explains quickly about that he's a martial artist and that he fights with his hands, his feet, his legs. Anything he can use is his weapon. His whole body is a weapon. And Erhard is shocked to hear this and actually suggests something, saying that maybe he can get behind some brass knuckles or maybe even something to put on his feet or his legs to kick harder and stronger and stuff like that. Unluckily, Erhard doesn't have any of that in stock, but he can order it right now and it would come in a couple days. Naofumi asks how much, and Erhard says that since he's, well, a weaponless hero, he'll give him a discount. And since he is a hero, he'll give him a discount. So he pays about 200 silvers out of all the silver he got, which was closer to 1500 because of the fact that he has no party members. He pays it to him and then even pays Erhard some extra. Erhard says that he doesn't need to do that, but Naofumi says that he wants a loyal person, and hopefully that will get him just that, and maybe in the future Erhard can help him out and then they can help each other out. Erhard says that he likes the way the guy thinks, and Naofumi decides to head off, continuing his leveling up. For the next day or so, he continues this, but unfortunately, he begins to kind of plateau. The fact that he doesn't have any help, he doesn't have anybody to really assist him in this, makes everything a lot slower. Yes, he's getting a good amount of XP by defeating monsters, and he can defeat them himself, seeing that his fists, his kicks, and all of it is pretty powerful, but he does need someone's help. And it seems like nobody wants to help him. It just feels that way. This then leads to a group of bandits offering their assistance, they can say, for Naofumi, saying that they could be that helpful person. They know he can't use weapons, or that he doesn't even have a weapon. What a poor hero that can't use a weapon. But as quick as this offer is, Naofumi realizes the faultiness in it, that they just want him to, well, fork over some cash. And Naofumi states this and says that if they want to mug him, they might as well just get along with it right now. There's no reason to stall. The bandits smile and then attack Naofumi, but quickly Naofumi is able to absolutely destroy them, immediately sweeping one's leg, kicking one in the shin, and then kicking one in the head. They're all down for the count, one knocked out, the other hurting in their leg so bad that they can't stand, and the other one terrified, sitting on the ground, not wanting to even stand back up, afraid that Naofumi will beat him senseless. Naofumi steps on his chest and says that he's not the person to be played with, especially when he's at such a disadvantage. Naofumi grabs his arm and says that he could break it right now. It would be so swift and easy, but he won't. He'll be nice about it. He kicks him in the face and then also kicks the other in the face, knocking all three of them out and dragging them to the guards. He throws them at them and says that they tried to mug him, and they immediately put them in prison. They don't necessarily disrespect Naofumi. They don't hate him, but they also don't necessarily like him by any means. He is a hero that doesn't even have a weapon. So how are they supposed to take this? How are they supposed to think that Naofumi is awesome or cool or anything or any of the above when they feel that he probably won't even be able to survive this next wave? The first wave that's going to happen for them, he's probably going to die. With all that said though, Naofumi still realizes that he needs help. He needs someone else. He begins to walk underneath this small like bridge, and someone approaches him. Someone very creepy. A short guy approaches him and spews off that he can give him somebody to help him out, you could say. He asks, how is that? And he asks for Naofumi just to follow him. Naofumi does just that, finding this giant slave market. Tons of slaves, from this giant monster dog to these small creatures and these other demi-humans. He explains that, well, he can give some help via a slave, something that can't disobey and something that would forcibly work for him. Naofumi is disgusted by the idea, but even realizes himself that he needs help, but he doesn't want it this way. He's about to reject the offer until he sees a little girl suffering. In this filth of a place, he's mad now. He wants to get her out of here, so that's what he decides. He says that he'll just take the little girl over there and he'll give him 5 silvers. He says 15, but they meet in the middle at 10. Naofumi gives him 10, and they put a slave crest on Raftalia, or at least that's what he finds out her name is, and takes her away. He apologizes, saying that the slave crest was just a formality and that he doesn't want her to be hurt anymore, and he'll help her out as much as he possibly can. They get her food and fed, and then eventually get her medicine, and now Raftalia is up and healthy immediately. And Naofumi begins to explain to her this though, that he does need help. He needs help with the waves. That these people may not recognize him as a hero, but he still wants to do everything in his power to protect them. Anything he can do. Raphtalia hears this and is shocked, but immediately she's fallen for Naofumi. The idea that someone like this could exist is beyond Raphtalia, but she's so excited. She explains that she's gone through so much and that she wants to help people too. And if this mister can help him or help everybody and help her, that she'll be along his side as long as she can stand. And Naofumi smiles and tells her to call him Naofumi, and she explains that her name is Raphtalia. They get a sword in her hand and they commence their training. Obviously, there is a big hurdle to go over with Raphtalia. She fears anything in terms of killing and blood, but luckily they're able to get over that. And very quickly, in fact, through stories that Naofumi has of him scratching and clawing his way through martial arts, and the fact that blood is the natural process of life, and death is as well. When death occurs, they're in a better place, in a nicer place, way nicer than the world they live in currently. And Naofumi gets her to get in this mindset. But with all that said, they need to head out to a new place, get new stuff. He gets Raphtalia new armor, a new sword luckily, and eventually gets word of a place called Loot Village via Erhard. So they head over and they even begin trying to trade stuff and talk to them, eventually learning of this cave that has tons of monsters that they could train on, but also amazing ores that they can sell for a nice price. So Naofumi and Raphtalia have their next goal, to head over to that cave, to head over to make some money and gain some experience. They arrive at the mine, but they don't actually see any monsters initially, so Naofumi decides to just start mining for this ore. He continues mining more and more and more until they hear a roar of this monster. It seems like one of the monsters have finally come out. He turns to see that it's a pretty high level monster, maybe even a higher level than him, but it shouldn't be necessarily a problem. He looks to Raphtalia though, and she's freaking out. She's practically on her backside now, scared, terrified of this monster, and she begins to cry, saying that that's the same monster that killed her parents. And she's freaking out, and she's in complete shock. Naofumi walks over to her and tries to calm her down, saying that this is part of all this training. She needs to push herself past this fear of this monster, and once she does, she can be way stronger than any monster that comes through those portals, way stronger than anything. And Raphtalia is terrified still, but stands up and she's shaking. Naofumi says that she wants all of this to be her choice, all her choice, but she needs to face it now. Choose. Does she want to fight the monster that could or could not have killed her parents, or at least looks like it? Or will she back down now and be afraid for the rest of her life? Raphtalia grips her sword tightly and immediately charges at the monster. Naofumi steps in front of her, gut punching the monster as she slices at its head, and immediately the monster is dead. Quick and effective, Naofumi realized that a frontal attack would probably have gotten Raphtalia killed, so he had to step in a little bit. But with all that said and done, Raphtalia, who is covered in blood, but the blood of the dog that looked so similar to the one that killed her parents, she's now free of those demons, at least partially. She now knows that she's strong enough, that she can be strong enough, and by the side of Naofumi, she can make a difference. She begs Naofumi to never, ever leave her side, and that she wants to fight with him forever. And Naofumi smiles, saying that they can get this slave crest off, that she can fight with him by her own means if she wants, and she shakes her head, saying that that's not a problem, that she doesn't care, that she never felt like a slave, that he's the one that saved her. Naofumi's happy to hear this, and even says that she does get an XP bonus when she has that slave crest on, so it is for the best that she has it on. He kind of laughs and carries her out of the cave. They sell all their ores and stuff they got, which is pretty beneficial, but what's the most beneficial is the XP they gained. They gained a good bit of XP from killing that monster, gaining a couple levels from it actually, and throughout this entire time, they continue their training, leveling up and various other things, and about 2 weeks out before the wave, his special brass knuckles or his special equipment then arrives. It seems like Erhard outdone himself. They're very, very small brass knuckles that form to his hand nicely, but when he punches, they don't hurt him very much at all. Actually, it doesn't hurt at all entirely. It has some padding around the fingers, and Erhard explains that there was some magic done to it so that it wouldn't hurt his fingers at all, and that it can develop and change as he goes along in terms of if he gains more strength in his hands or anything like that. And it's the same thing for his legs and his shin guards that he has. These metal shin guards that are very flexible but pack a punch when landed correctly, and he assumes Naofumi, as the martial artist he is, he'll be able to land it pretty correctly. Naofumi smiles and thanks him and even gives him some extra money, and Erhard says that he appreciates the gesture but he doesn't need it, not quite right now, to not worry about it and worry about himself, especially with only 2 weeks before the next wave. Naofumi thanks him and Raphtalia and him head off. And during their training though, someone actually approaches him. In the mid of night, some odd figure of some sorts begins to circle them, and Naofumi can sense it, can look straight at the creature's whereabouts and knows exactly where the person is. This person immediately charges forward at Naofumi, and Naofumi stands guard, but she doesn't attack. She just stands there in excitement to see this person. She says that she heard about him, that she's heard of this person that is the legendary hero, but he has no weapon, and that she finds it so awesome, and that it doesn't matter if he doesn't have a weapon, he can still fight, and he can still hurt people and help people, and he's confused. Does he have a fangirl in this world? How does that even make sense? He's not like even in MMA and UFC he was that popular, but why the heck does they have a fangirl now? Raphtalia is confused as well and even asks who this girl is, and she says that she's sorry, she hasn't even introduced herself. She says that her name is Ellie, and that she's an adventurer as well, but she's not very good at adventuring. She's kind of by herself, and that she only knows how to heal people. That's all she's good for. She shows her staff and her wand thing, and she begins explaining that that's all she's been able to do throughout all her adventures, and well, every team that she goes with, they seem to, well, leave her in the dust, and that she can't level up as easy as everybody else. It doesn't work, it doesn't help her. And Naofumi is hesitant, very hesitant. He literally got jumped by robbers and bandits because they said they wanted to be part of his team. But now this random girl is saying that she wants to be part of it. And Raphtalia is questioning her as well, but she is a better, well, sense of judgment than Naofumi. Eventually, Raphtalia says that they should give her a chance. A healer would be really good for their party, and she begins nodding excessively, saying that she promises to do her best, and Naofumi just shakes his head and laughs. Okay, Ellie, we'll give you a shot. Why not? She begins to get excited and hugs Naofumi, but Raphtalia puts her sword in front of him before, well, she can even hug him fully, and says to back off. And she nervously backs up and apologizes. Naofumi just laughs and says that they still have training to do, and well, he'll add her to the party. So he does just that, but currently she doesn't have a slave crest, and Raphtalia even brings it up, saying that if she really wants to be loyal, then maybe she should get a slave crest. She's super hesitant about this, saying that a slave crest, like, she can't be a slave, that she's not a slave. But Naofumi says that that's a good idea. This would be a test of loyalty. Raphtalia had the choice to get her slave crest off, but she decided she didn't want it off. So it's her choice though. Ellie then is kind of shaken by this, but her determination shows in her face and says that she'll get the slave crest and she'll prove to Naofumi and Raphtalia that she could be useful, that she'll be helpful. And Naofumi smiles and says that they'll get that done right now. So they head to the slave market once again, getting the slave crest on her, which costs a little bit of silver, but not too much. After all that is said and done though, the training finally begins, and Ellie begins to see some pretty good growth. Obviously with Naofumi and Raphtalia, two very capable fighters, it's blatantly obvious that she's going to be of a lot of help. The only thing that really sucks is that she's kind of, well, you could say a weakness. They have to protect her pretty heavily, but she is also a strength at the same time, keeping them more or less healed, and their stamina seems to be regenerating at a faster rate. They're not getting tired very much anymore, so this allows them for even more effective training sessions. So it's like a double-edged sword. She can boost them in strength and regeneration and stamina, but she is weak on her own, so she needs protection. And luckily, Naofumi has the means of doing this. They're both really strong, so of course they can protect her, and they're going to make sure that they come up with certain battle formations to make it so that she won't get hurt ever. She also begins to learn a new ability, an ability that is kind of like a guardian angel ability that allows her to fly over or fly away from certain areas of, well, if a monster is there, she can fly to Raphtalia, and vice versa. If there's a monster near Raphtalia that's going to strike her, she can fly toward Naofumi. It's very beneficial, and it seems to only work with people in her party, in which she even brings that up, saying that it seems when she looks at other people, it's not like she can just fly over to them. But with all that said, 2 weeks then pass, and the first wave of catastrophe is upon them. With all of them more or less at around a level of 20 to 25, they feel pretty prepared. Naofumi is actually probably a slightly higher level than Raphtalia, especially with the fact that he can fight on his own. And with his new brass knuckles, luckily it doesn't restrict his strength, it actually boosts it. Instead of a 2x multiplier, it's a 2.5x multiplier in all his stats, giving him insane amounts of strength, but obviously this is very restricted. His hand-to-hand and close-range combat is going to be restricted, especially when there's people that are further distances and stuff like that, and that would be kind of a struggle if there's flying people or flying monsters or monsters that won't get close enough for him to strike. In which he does have trouble with this when this first wave attacks and he begins fighting for the people of Loot. They're able to easily defend it off, but the Hornets are a little bit of a struggle. He's able to grab them and pin them to the ground with his jujitsu pretty easily when they get closer, but it is a bit of a struggle when they're flying above him and other things like that. But luckily, this is gonna go pretty easily. Even all the people in the village are being healed and replenished by Ellie. Ellie is very effective, and she learns that even when she starts healing people and stuff like that, she can actually gain XP on top of that. So Ellie will be able to gain more and more XP as she heals more and more people, which Naofumi finds this very beneficial because she's going to be doing that most of the time, if not all of the time. But it would be nice to have somebody to pair up with Ellie, maybe a monster of some sort, or maybe even another team member that can protect her when they're not there. And that's their sole purpose, is to more or less just protect Ellie the best they possibly can. But with all that said and done, the monsters are exterminated very quickly at the village of Lutz, or, well, the place of Lutz, and they easily defeat all of them, waiting for the monster or the main boss to be defeated. Eventually, that main boss is defeated, and the skies begin to clear up. Naofumi congratulates both of them, saying they did a very good job, and actually this was a good way of leveling in itself, bringing Naofumi to about a level of 27, Raphtalia to a level of about 24, and Ellie to about a level of 18. Luckily, this is a pretty good starting point for all of them. Ellie, who doesn't really level up fast by any means at all, is leveling up relatively quickly. Raphtalia has been leveling up very quickly as well, and they've been doing very inefficient training, you could say. They're fighting monsters, but not monsters that are higher level than them. If they continued fighting a monster that was like that dog they fought, who was a high level, and they fought them all the time, their levels would grow exponentially, especially with the fact that they have the slave crest on and they give a massive boost. But there's a lot more Naofumi doesn't know. He's not big on video games. Yes, he did play them in his off time, but who doesn't when you're actually like hooked up on work all the time? So of course he's gonna play some video games, but he's not super in depth with all of it. He doesn't know anything else that his powers are part of, so that's one thing he really wants to learn. Is there anything else as the martial arts hero of some sorts, is what he deems himself as, or the unarmed hero? He believes that maybe there is more to his powers. Maybe there is a substitute for long range. Maybe there's certain weapons that he can get, or like his brass knuckles, that will experience him to have more long range attacks, maybe stronger close range attacks, and various other things like that. But with all that said, that's all hypothetical and nothing he knows for sure. Luckily, with all that time, he can basically just go over and think about it during this state dinner that he's more or less forced to go to. Ellie and Raphtalia are enjoying it heavily, saying that they love the food and it tastes great. Naofumi says that he's not big on eating this amazing food. He's never been on or off a diet, frankly. So he says that he's not really big on the cake and the steak and all that. He likes it, he enjoys it, but he doesn't really feel that it's his thing, at least not at the moment. He says he'll try a couple things, but that's about it. They say that they run over with more food and basically have him try this and that and this and that. And now Fumi just smiles and says that he's fine now, he's not really hungry. He begins laughing and so do they, but there's something looming in the distance. It's Motoyasu. The spirit hero is being talked to by Mine. It seems like Mine has something to say about the two people that are in Naofumi's party. And Motoyasu runs over, throwing his glove on the ground, saying that he's going to fight Naofumi to free his slaves. And Naofumi finds this ridiculous, that they are in his party by choice. Ellie wasn't even a slave in the first place, and she nods, saying that she asked to join his party in the first place as well, and got the slave crest as a sign of loyalty. And Raphtalia says the same thing, that Naofumi offered to get rid of the slave crest, but she refused, saying that it was like a sign of loyalty to Naofumi. And Motoyasu and Mine and everybody there isn't believing it. They say that there's no way someone like him would do that, but he's confused. What do you mean, someone like me? I don't get it. What do you have against me? They begin saying that in his place was supposed to be the shield hero, and he acts just like him, just like the devil of the shield. And he's confused by this, shocked by this, that they so openly talked about it. He's not the shield hero, but he was the replacement for one? He's confused, and he swore that maybe he was just not was summoned by accident. Maybe he wasn't supposed to be here, but he stands up and grabs the glove and smacks Motoyasu in the face. I accept your challenge, but this is gonna go really bad for you. I just want you to know that. The duel is then upon them. Naofumi stands in front of Motoyasu to see that he's almost twice his level, and Naofumi smirks slightly, saying that he really wishes he could have had effective training the entire time. Maybe he would have been as high as Motoyasu. Motoyasu says that it's still not too late to back down and just free his slaves. And Naofumi says that he's fought people far bigger, far stronger, and a lot more, threatening than him. Motoyasu takes this as, a threat, saying that, what, you think you're just gonna beat me with ease? It doesn't matter what our levels are. I'll beat you. Trust me. Motoyasu doesn't understand that yes, Naofumi may be a lower level, and yes, he might be quote-unquote less powerful, but Naofumi has technique, has all this power beyond just a level. It doesn't necessarily matter. Naofumi knows various martial arts, and this was gonna go really, really bad, really fast. Naofumi watches as Motoyasu charges in just like an idiot, and at such a slow speed. Naofumi slips under it and immediately punches him in the stomach, ripping off part of his armor, then grabbing his arm that he's holding the spear with, flipping him on his back, immediately cranking his arm. Naofumi has him in the quickest armbar he could possibly think of. Motoyasu is slow, not good with hand-to-hand combat. He's just relying on his spear. But on the other hand, Naofumi is relying on everything. His body, his mind, his hands, feet, shins, anything he can think of. He immediately gets Motoyasu in this armbar, and Motoyasu cannot do a thing. His spear is basically on the hand that is completely occupied, and Motoyasu can't do absolutely anything. Naofumi tells him to give up, or he'll break the arm, and Motoyasu says, don't you dare. So, Naofumi dares, breaking his arm and then getting up. I told you, do you want to yield? And Motoyasu is screaming in pain, screaming that he broke his arm. But as this occurs, a blast of magic hits Naofumi in the back and sends him flying. He's able to regain himself luckily, but he looks to see one broken arm on Motoyasu, but he's standing still using his ultimate move, ready to blast Naofumi out of this ring. Naofumi's pissed. He knows someone, whoever it was, just interfered with their battle, but he doesn't care. He still will stand his ground and make sure that this blast doesn't hit him. Naofumi stands his ground, plants one foot in front of him, and goes to clash with the blast. He punches the blast, and out of nowhere, the blast begins to get pushed back. Naofumi's hand begins to seemingly absorb whatever power that is coming toward him, and he can feel it. He begins to smooth his arm around the blast. This lightning bolt begins to travel up his arm, and he swiftly counters it, throwing it to the side. But he looks at his hand and places it on his chest, and it begins to absorb into himself. He looks to see that his level just went up by 3 levels immediately, just like that. Whatever power this guy just sent at him was very strong, but he was able to use it for his own advantage. It seems like Naofumi can absorb attacks, powerful attacks, and, well, gain levels from it. He just gained that much experience from absorbing an attack from somebody twice his level. Naofumi, now at a level of 30 to 31, stands in front of Motoyasu, and Motoyasu is shocked to see this. He just blocked his biggest attack. Naofumi immediately in front of him again begins his onslaught, landing rights and lefts, landing gut punches, leg kicks, immediately kicking him in the head and then dropping him to the ground. It's over, Motoyasu. You don't understand. These people want to be around me, want to be in my party. It's that simple. Why can't you get that through your head? Motoyasu says that slavery is wrong, and Naofumi agrees that it is wrong if it's not by choice. It's by choice, Motoyasu, and in this world, slavery is, for one, legal, and also they've told you multiple times that they willingly did this. So what's your problem? They get more XP, they have benefit more from this. They can fight better, they're stronger. It's that simple. Motoyasu is shocked to hear this, and Naofumi says that if he doesn't yield, he's gonna have to knock him out. And Motoyasu says that he won't yield to this. He refuses, but as he says this, Naofumi kicks him in the face, and you can hear the crowd go ooh and ah, and basically saying that looked like it hurt. Motoyasu is out cold with a broken arm and down for the count. Naofumi leaves and begins to wonder that he was still able to get XP even though they were near the other heroes. This ability must work differently. It must be completely different. He looks to see that maybe it affected Motoyasu's levels, and he sees that it did. It seems that if someone is stronger than him, or maybe higher level, maybe a monster, a person, anything, he can sap the levels out, or XP, to a certain extent. It didn't affect Motoyasu too much, because leveling obviously scales, so he only lost about half a level, but Naofumi gained 3 levels from it. This is interesting, something he's gonna have to keep in mind, and something he'll have to use if the heroes want to, well, play unfair. Naofumi goes to leave, saying that it's time for them to go, that they have some things to attend to, that they have a lot of work to do. But Ren and Itsuki actually stop them, and they apologize, saying that they saw what Mine did, and all the other noblemen are told to basically shut up about it. And he says that it's fine, that he wasn't going to win with all the outside help in the world. It wouldn't have mattered. And Naofumi just begins to walk away, and Ren even asks how he got that strong, and Naofumi even shrugs. You guys are stronger than me, at least by level. I'm this strong because I know all these martial arts. It's been part of me for a while now. That's where I came from, remember? I was a martial artist. So, I will say, this definitely is helping me in the long run. They all, well, at least Ren and Itsuki understand now, that there's more to this world than just that. Of course, they still see it as a video game. but they do think about maybe they should expand their arsenal. Maybe learning how to use a bow and learning how to use a sword is not just it. Maybe they should learn other things, how to properly use certain combos, stances, certain weaknesses that they can exploit by getting inside or being on the outside of a monster based on their reach and range. They think about all this. That's what martial arts is for, and that's what it thrives on, and that's what Naofumi just saw, using the weakness of someone else to your own advantage. And with all that said, Naofumi is finally gone. He leaves with his party, and they're pretty impressed. They're saying that whatever move that he did to gain those 3 levels was really awesome, and he says that he really doesn't even know what he did. It looked like he just tried to parry it in a way, and that's what he thought he was going to be able to do, but it was more like he absorbed it. But he didn't even absorb the entire blast. If he did, he might have gotten even stronger from it. And Naofumi says that it doesn't even seem like it's temporary either. All his punches do so much damage, and this leveling that he got extra is permanent. And obviously Raphtalia and Ellie are shocked to hear this, and they say that this is great, and maybe they can take advantage of this. Maybe this will be the answer to them growing faster and faster, or at least Naofumi growing faster and faster. He nods and agrees, but says that they should do one thing at a time, in which that brings them to the slave market. And Raphtalia and Ellie obviously are confused by what they're doing there, and he says that he got some extra money, so he thought that maybe they can get one more, maybe a monster to help Ellie and protect her. She begins to kind of blush and say that Naofumi is really thinking about protecting her, and Naofumi kind of laughs and just says that she can't fight for herself, so it kind of needs to be done. Raphtalia kind of laughs at her, saying that she can't fight for herself, but Naofumi tells them to stop messing around, and it leads them to buying a gacha egg, or a gacha monster egg, which later on hatches into a Flolial. Eventually, Naofumi names it Philo, which Raphtalia and Ellie think that it's very not creative at all. But Naofumi says that, you know, he can name it whatever he wants. With all that done, though, they finally begin to progress a little bit, visiting Loot Village and other things like that, and seeing the high growing of the Flolial. It seems like the Flolial is growing faster because she's in a hero's party, which is very interesting. Even Naofumi is kind of confused by this and looks through all his skills. Maybe he has a growing skill as well or something. He finds that he kind of does. It's in a way based on monsters, but it's based on the connection he has with a monster. But it's nothing crazy, it's just like a 25% boost in speed of growing, but it must also have to do with him being a legendary hero technically. So that's why the Flolial is growing so fast, eventually growing to be a full-size Flolial. And then he obviously tries out, you know, riding Philo and other things like that, and this then leads to Motoyasu and Mine visiting Loot Village. Naofumi obviously tells them to just bug off. There's no way they're gonna let them just run up this a horrible tax without knowing how much these people pay or what are the money limitations on this place, and that they have no right to do that. And Mine says that they do. It's a royal decree, and Naofumi calls that ridiculous, and that he'll fight for it again if Motoyasu wants. But he kind of laughs and says, "Oh wait, but he still has a partially broken arm. My bad." Mine is pissed to hear this, but as she's about to do something, someone shows up in front of her. It seems like a shadow from the queen, delivers a message to Mine, basically saying that she cannot take over this place and that she should be treating this unarmed hero or the martial arts hero properly. Mine is pissed to hear this and goes to basically say that they're going to challenge him to a race, but Motoyasu says that he's really not even up for it, that he's hurt and that he can't really go for that. And Naofumi says that that's ridiculous anyways, to just get out of here and leave it at that before they embarrass themselves even more. Eventually Motoyasu leaves, and so does Mine, but Mine says that this isn't over and that she'll make sure that he pays. Which Naofumi is shocked to hear this, like, what do you have against me? Like, he hasn't done anything, but obviously in her little sick mind, she thinks that. But with all that said, Philo hears this and is pretty mad and kicks the living hell out of Motoyasu, sending him flying. And Mine is insane by that and is going crazy and saying that why would the Filolio do that? But Naofumi doesn't have an answer. He just starts laughing more and more, actually thanking Philo for the comically funny kick. And with all that done, obviously they have to head off and do some things, eventually leading to Philo growing in size. Philo's this huge bird now, and Naofumi is shocked to see this, and well, it must have something to do with him being a legendary hero. That's the conclusion he makes eventually, and this leads them to just sleeping for the night. Waking up, Naofumi hears the screams of Raphtalia and Ellie, and they say that, "Who is that? Wait, how'd she get there?" And Naofumi is shocked and is confused, seeing a little girl laying on his leg, and he gets up immediately, and she's confused as well, asking why Master Naofumi is acting so weird. And he realizes that this person is Philo somehow. He throws a blanket over her because she's kind of not wearing clothes, but throws a blanket over her, and this then leads them to Erhard, trying to find a dressmaker or something that can help them out. Erhard actually does say that he has magical thread and that it was a special order, knowing that Naofumi would probably have or need something of that ballpark. So luckily he gets it pretty early, leading him to that dressmaker, and they make Philo a nice dress. The beautiful same dress as normal. This then leads them to take a wagon that they got from Loot Village and have Philo and obviously the rest of them head off on a small journey to see other villages. This leads them to actually meeting a wealthy trader who they help obviously, but a group of bandits attack their wagon, in which they defeat very easily, and they basically say that they're gonna say all this stuff about Naofumi, but Naofumi threatens them, most likely saying, or basically saying, that Philo's going to eat their heads off. This then leads them to obviously forking over a bunch of loot, and Philo doesn't eat them, but they swear that they're not going to say a word. So Naofumi drops the man off, the trader, and learns some new skills and actually gains some new contacts. This then leads them to actually, instead of heading into the mines like how they did initially, was to head over to actually deliver a herbicide. Luckily they were able to do this pretty quickly, so they didn't have to worry too much about other things going on. So they immediately head off to go help this village out, and when Naofumi arrives, it seems like it's just starting to become a monstrous plant, and he immediately goes to the village to take action. He begins talking to them, asking what's happening, and they just explain everything that happened, that the spear hero ended their famine but sprouted these plants that started attacking the villagers. So Naofumi, without another word with the rest of his party, heads off and begins trying to cure this plant or shut it down, in which they're actually able to do. Since they're there a slightly more early, it actually helps them in this instance, with Ellie especially. The herbicide alone won't be able to affect it, but it seems that Ellie's power will be very beneficial. Using her power and her magic, it seems like Ellie's able to, you could say, slow down the growth of this monstrous plant while the herbicide takes effect. Naofumi apologizes and says that he'll make sure to give her a gift or some special food that she likes, because he knows that it's going to be very draining to hold this plant in place, or at least stunt the growth in the meantime while the herbicide takes effect. She says that it's fine and that she's just happy to feel useful, and Naofumi nods, saying that she's definitely useful. This makes her happy, and she kind of jumps for joy and loses focus for a second, but is able to gain it back and kind of smiles nervously. This obviously eventually leads to the herbicide killing the plants. Luckily, when Naofumi administrated it, it did boost the strength a slight bit, not by a lot, but definitely by a little bit, and with Ellie's magic, it definitely made it more potent and stopped the plant from growing very much anymore. Unfortunately, Naofumi explains that he doesn't really have a way to help them in their food instance, but he could try and help with just regular seeds, and that's the best he can possibly do. Ellie says that she has some experience in farming and that she can make sure that the land is fertile enough, and Naofumi thanks her for that, and they all help out to basically set up a nice farm for them. But that's all they can really do, and Naofumi explains that they're just gonna need to find another way to get food in the meantime while everything's growing, and then they should become pretty self-sufficient. They thank him and say that, well, they don't know what to call him. Do they call him Naofumi? Do they call him the unarmed hero? What do they call him? And he says that Naofumi is just fine. He really doesn't mind. Or they can call him the martial arts hero. That sounds cooler. And they agree, saying that the martial arts hero sounds way cooler than like the unarmed hero. And he kind of laughs about this and says that he needs to head off, in which he does. He actually has another job, and that's to actually deliver more merchandise to a hot springs village. And when they arrive, they actually decide to stay the night, in which Naofumi spends time with Philo, Raphtalia, and Ellie, but mostly Philo. It's kind of funny, they get split up into different hot springs, and Raphtalia and Ellie are together and Philo is with Naofumi, and they're both frustrated, saying that they wanted to be with Naofumi, and they kind of argue over it for a little bit. After all that's said and done though, they all head to bed, but Philo, Raphtalia, and Ellie actually want to go find something. Find this, well, boar or these eggs that they've heard about, but leads them to finding a boar, and it attacks them, in which they eventually just kill the boar and bring it back to Naofumi as the gift. And Naofumi is pretty impressed that the boar is very interesting, and he may be able to get something out of it. He eventually sells it, but obviously keeps some of it, keeps the teeth and also some other of its claws or hooves. So he just absorbs those into his gem to see that maybe he can get the strength, or maybe he can get a special ability out of it. But unluckily enough, he didn't really get much from it. It seems to help a little bit, and maybe it's on the pathway of getting to another martial arts type of power, but currently there's not much ahead of him. But luckily they got the money, so that's a plus at least. After this though, Naofumi learns of this mysterious disease. It seems like there's a disease spreading through a village, and when he arrives and goes to investigate it, he finds out why the disease is there. But he does see all of these people suffering, hurting, dying because of this disease, and it definitely frustrates him, pisses him off to the point where he says that he'll handle it. He'll dispose of this whatever so-called dragon that is rotting away, and he'll handle everything as quick as possible. Naofumi and his team immediately go up, but when they're on the way up, Naofumi begins to sense something. This rage within someone, this power. It seems like whatever's up here isn't quite dead. When they arrive, they go to basically chop up the monster, but Naofumi tells them to back up, that this monster isn't dead. And they're confused. How could this dragon not be dead? But as they think that, and as they begin to talk about it, the dragon begins to stand. It's a zombified dragon, ready for revenge. It wants revenge on Ren, the sword hero that killed him, but this other hero and his party will do just as well. Raphtalia charges in and slices at the dragon's wing and cuts it partially, but can't really get through the skin of it, and Ellie can't really do anything else other than just heal them. Philo is mad, doesn't like, and she does not like dragons. She goes into her full state, or her more or less Philolial queen state, and charges at the dragon, kicking it a bunch of times, but then the dragon swallows her whole. Naofumi and his eyes grow wide, and he is pissed. His aura begins to erupt. It's like he's never felt anger like this before, but this is different. He's mad. He is so furious at seeing his party member get killed. This aura, it's this red aura surrounds him, and his fists begin to grow in size. Not physically though. It's the aura around him that makes his fists huge. It seems like this aura is acting out of himself. It's growing his body. It's like he's turning giant, bigger, and it's something he can control. This rage within him it's boiling over. He's now larger than he honestly can possibly think of. 8, 9, maybe even 10 feet tall. Naofumi may be at the bottom, but the aura is at the top. The aura is 10 feet above him, and he begins to lay in to the dragon, punch after punch, grabbing the dragon by the neck and slamming him down in an instant, punching his stomach, telling him to give back Philo right now. Naofumi has a boost of strength that is far more than he's ever seen. His normal 2.5 times is nothing compared to this. It's not even able to be comprehended. It seems like this strength is coming from a core anger that he never knew he had. It's this bloodlust. This is why he loved fighting in the first place. He loved the act of punching somebody in the face. He loved the act of making people bleed, but he would always repress it. He always had to. That love for making people bleed would lead to you hitting people illegally, or maybe grappling them and hurting them illegally as well. But Naofumi doesn't have to hold back anymore. He begins laying into the dragon over and over and over again, leading to the dragon spitting up Philo, and again he punches the dragon in the face and then begins to obliterate the dragon. Whatever Naofumi just did, his power was off the charts. His level seemed to be non-existent, like it didn't even matter. And Naofumi collapses to the ground after the dragon is put to rest once again. They're all shocked to see this, and Rautalia tells Ellie that they need to start the process of chopping him up and putting him away right now, because if he reawakens, that's gonna be a problem. And Naofumi is just out cold on the ground. Philo crawls next to him and gets him in the wagon, and eventually they drag him off to another place. Well, the same village, but they start getting on the road, knowing that they have to head off once again. This, though, will lead to them stopping. And Naofumi begins to get up and begins to question what happened, and Philo hands him a gem, and they all stand around him and they apologize that they weren't able to help, and that Philo says that this gem hopefully will make him feel better. And he's confused and says that if it's like a gift, right? And they all nod, and he puts it within his gem on his chest, realizing that this gem shard was part of the dragon he just fought. This exponentially boosts his power. It seems like it unlocked multiple versions of his strength and shows whatever he was or just did. And Philo and Rautalia and Ellie explain actually what happened. It's as if this aura erupted around him. It seemed like it was a bigger version of himself. It was just scaling to the monster he was fighting, and maybe the combination of all the other things he has absorbed kind of contributed to it, making him a bigger version of himself, and was able to fight with some monster that was bigger than him. And Naofumi is shocked to hear this, and he asks what caused him to do this, and they're confused, thinking that Naofumi would have known that, but he doesn't. He doesn't remember anything. He remembers walking up the hill, and that was it, nothing else. And they explain that Philo got swallowed by the dragon and he went haywire. And Naofumi shakes his head and says that he promises to never let her get hurt like that ever again. And Philo says that it's fine, that it was her fault that she got hurt. She got mad and tried to do it on her own. And Naofumi shakes his head again and says that that's his job, is to help them and make sure they are safe all the time. But they disagree. They say they're a party, and that if they would be willing to sacrifice their own life to save Master Naofumi's. And when this is said, Naofumi feels something in his chest, happiness. He's happy to hear this, happy to hear that he has people like them willing to sacrifice themselves if need be. Someone like that is someone you want on your team, someone that's not a liability, but someone also willing to put you over everything. Anybody would love to have something like that, and Naofumi has it. He smiles and is happy to hear this, leading him to ask if anybody else got hurt. And they say no, that on the contrary, they got a good amount of levels out of him defeating the dragon. It seems like since they all had a quote-unquote helping hand in defeating it, they got tons of XP from it as well. Naofumi is actually shocked to hear this and checks his level, seeing that he's at a level of 37 and that Raphtalia is at a level of 32 and that Philo is at a level about 29 and Ellie is about a level of 25. Seeing that they're growing at really fast rates and by no time they're going to need a class upgrade, which Naofumi is happy to hear and know about. This though, this conversation will end pretty quickly when Naofumi spots someone in a field. He sees this little girl playing with a bunch of Philolials, and Philo runs over, actually greeting the girl, saying that, or asking if she wants to be friends. And Melty quickly befriends Philo, and they basically ask Naofumi if they could accompany her to the capital. Naofumi smiles and says that that would be no problem at all, and that he wouldn't mind tagging her along, but they do have a couple stops to go to if that's fine with her. Melty says that's completely fine, so that's what they do. They stop by at a couple places and then eventually arrive at the capital. When they arrive at the capital, Naofumi is attacked by the spear hero once again. Naofumi quickly dodges and is able to parry, but asks why is he attacking him? What's the point? What is he doing? And the spear hero says that he heard about another slave in his party, that little girl right there. How could he do that? That is horrible. Mine, who's standing there next to him, is basically laughing at Naofumi. The struggle that Naofumi is going through is all because of her, because of the king's freaking daughter. Why is royalty out to get him that bad? Naofumi stands his ground and tells Motoyasu to basically back down. If he doesn't back down, he'll break both of his arms this time. Naofumi is serious. He's mad now. He's frustrated with all these people. They're slowing his progress down and the fact that they're treating him like this. Motoyasu goes to strike once again, but royal guards and someone else stands next to him, telling them to stop. Melty tugs on Naofumi's shirt and says that he apologizes for her sister's actions and also the spear hero's actions. Melty begins to explain that she's the second princess, the heir apparent to the queen. And Naofumi is shocked to hear this. Another person of royalty? Is she good? Can I really trust her if she's royalty? Naofumi's not sure. And, well, you'll have to wait to see if he does in the next one. Naofumi Iwatani, the martial arts hero, has just found out that Melty is part of the royal family. Mine, Motoyasu, the king, all have been giving Naofumi trouble just because of who he is. Because he doesn't have a weapon. Because he's some figment of the shield hero. He doesn't know. But will he trust Melty, even though she hasn't shown much, well, you could say, malice toward Naofumi? Will he not trust her just because she's part of the royal family? Let's find out on What If Naofumi Was the Martial Arts Hero. Naofumi stands there in disbelief at the learning and him knowing that Melty is part of the royal family, the second princess, the heir apparent to the queen. He doesn't know how to feel about this initially, thinking that Melty could turn on him in any second, any moment of time right now. Yes, he's helped her. Yes, he was nice and all of this, but he didn't do anything to the royal family. So what says that she won't turn on him as well? They decide to go to Erhard's, blacksmith to talk about this. And Melty explains that she is not her sister and that she is not the person he should be threatened by. And Naofumi says he won't put it against her, not right now, but he isn't so sure if he can trust her. Raphtalia and Ellie do point out the fact that, she does deserve a chance to prove herself at least, and Melty says that she promises that she means no ill will and that all she wants is to find success for Naofumi's party, especially in the waves of catastrophe, and that's what matters to her. So Naofumi decides that he'll in the meantime trust her, or sort of trust her for the moment, but he does have some things to handle. He needs to get ready for the next wave. a small party actually wishes to join him to basically help Loot Village because that was their hometown and he saved them without even really realizing it. He personally decided to make sure that Loot Village was safe, and he says that he doesn't necessarily want to allow them in his party, but he will provide them with things that they'll need for their journey to help their village and save Loot Village. But Naofumi begins to say that they need to figure out something. They need to actually get their class upgrades, speaking with Melty and asking where they should head for that. She explains that the Dragon Hourglass is where they'll get their class upgrades, in which they head over. But when they do, it seems that the royal decree refuses to let his party get their class upgrades. He is frustrated by this and doesn't understand. But luckily, the slave market owner actually tells them about Shield Frieden and their hourglass, that they can go to a different country and, well, get their levels uncapped or their class upgrades so that their cap increases. But with that all said, the next wave will strike before they reach there. So while scouting for towns and various other things, Naofumi actually does happen upon some starving refugees who fled a revolution started by the very own of their heroes, the bow hero, which he finds to be infuriating. He tries to help them in terms of food, water, and everything like that, and explains to them that he'll try to get everything sorted for them, but they're gonna need to work together the best they possibly can. And they all agree. So Naofumi, over this short period of time, helps them with food, water, shelter, and everything that he possibly can until, well, obviously the wave is near. Returning for the wave though, Naofumi gets encountered by Ren and Itsuki, in which they accuse him of stealing their rewards, or well, they accuse him of stealing their rewards, and he explains that the revolution that Itsuki started turned really bad, and that putting in a new government like that, just as corrupt as the old one, doesn't fix the problem. And Ren was having a very, very big problem in terms of killing something but not disposing of it. He killed a giant dragon and it caused a plague, a horrible plague, and this bothered Naofumi heavily. The fact that he didn't even think that it would affect other people bothers him greatly. They hear what he's saying and luckily listen to the words that is coming out of Naofumi's mouth and decide to actually focus on these things that he's saying. But there's no guarantee that they'll always focus on this. With all that said and done, it doesn't matter anymore. Erhard gives Naofumi some upgrades that he needs for his armor and weaponry, and actually gives a couple upgrades to his brass knuckles and his shin guards and stuff like that, so he can continue on using all limbs when fighting. And he actually asks Erhard if he could make something that would recognize this power that he has, and Erhard says that that is definitely out of his jurisdiction and definitely out of his skill range. He apologizes that he won't be able to help with that, but Naofumi says that it was a long shot anyways. Luckily, they were able to buy better gear for his party and the other party that's going to help protect Loot Village, and now it's time, actually 24 hours of time before the next wave arrives. With everyone equipped, everyone ready, they arrive at Loot Village to protect them as best they possibly can, in which they do just fine. It's very easy actually, but after a couple hours, Naofumi worries that the other hero's progress is stagnant. It seems like nothing is occurring, but luckily he can leave. Everybody there at Loot Village is pretty capable of defending themselves, so they head off with Philo, Ellie, and also Raphtalia. When they arrive, this is not good. They see the Dutchman's ship still sitting there and the other heroes arguing about it. Naofumi chastises them for their inattention and exposes immediately what he sees, the shadow next to the Dutchman, which Raphtalia is able to expose the hidden boss, the massive Soul Eater. Immediately, Naofumi begins to try and focus, and he says that he needs some time. Maybe he can forcefully make this power come out. He's not sure. Out of rage and fear for someone's life, that's why it came out. So maybe it won't come out again, but maybe he can replicate that said feeling. He begins to focus more and more, but it's a roadblock. He can't get it. He can't transform, and he can't make himself that powerful person he was before. Nothing's working. He realizes that it doesn't matter anymore, and that he can probably fight the Soul Eater on his own or with his party if they work together properly. In which Philo is able to kick it from the side as Naofumi immediately grounds it into the ship, and they begin to try and attack it. And after a decent amount of struggle, they're finally able to defeat it. Luckily, they were able to do this, but the other heroes are just standing by. Actually, just shocked that he was able to finish it up so quickly. But this shock and everything would come crashing down when another one appears. Naofumi believes that maybe they have enough strength to finish this one off as well, but that's not the case, because that one dies instantly. Glass, a woman in a black kimono wielding 2 bladed war fans, has arrived. The true enemy of this wave has just been revealed. This Raven invader easily defeats the other 3 heroes and their parties, and she steps up, challenging Naofumi, saying that he's very interesting, seems very powerful, but Naofumi is taking this very seriously. He doesn't care what Glass believes and immediately charges at her at really fast speeds, but when he goes to punch her, she blocks it with her war fan, but with some resistance. It seems like Glass is slightly struggling at, holding back the power of Naofumi. His stats are high, his level may be low, but the boost he gets from his hand-to-hand unarmed combat is a high one. Naofumi decides that maybe he can expose a weakness Glass has, maybe he can get on a certain side of Glass that she won't be able to strike him, or maybe he can get her to the ground. He immediately tries to sweep her legs and flip her on her back, but she's able to do a backflip, kicking him off, and she's shocked to see this. Some hero that is really in depth in martial arts, really in depth in fighting. This is unusual. She's personally relies on her power, but she has a very agile style, so she's able to dip and dodge out of certain situations, and she realizes that taking Naofumi seriously is very important. So that's what she starts doing, blasting at Naofumi's party, forcing them to retreat, and Philo is able to get them out of dodge, at least temporarily. Luckily, Ellie can keep them replenished and healing, but as a massive blast comes soaring at them, Naofumi gets an idea that he's done before against the spear hero. He stands up and goes to counter the blast, holding his hands out, and he's holding it back. But instead of parrying part of it, he tries to absorb the entire blast. He absorbs half of it, but then realizes that he can't absorb the entirety of it. It's going to hurt really bad if he messes up even 1 centimeter. If it lands clean on his chest, it might just kill him. He swipes the rest away, and he gains levels from it, now being at a level of 47. Naofumi looks up and analyzes the invader, and it seems like she's gotten weaker. He smirks and tells Philo that she needs to turn around, that they need to go on the offensive now while she's weakened, and he attacks, punching her clean in the face and kicking her in the stomach, sending her back to the backside of the ship. He goes in to grab her, dragging her out of the ship, and continues his offense as she tries to dodge and kick him away. She's questioning him. How the hell did he get so strong in such a short amount of time, and how does she feel so weak? Luckily, she might be able to heal herself, replenish herself with something, but as she gets this in mind, she senses that the wave is about to finish up. She senses that she's going to have to leave now. So Glass decides to take her leave and attack him later on. If she wasn't so weak right now, even this strong Naofumi would be nothing to her. So she heads off. She leaves and smiles, saying that she definitely will be back, and she hopes that he'll be ready. He smiles, saying that he'll definitely be ready and that she's the one retreating. The wave closes, and Naofumi stands there with his party as everybody questions what power did he just show off, and he said he's shown it off before. He's used that power against Motoyasu. But that's not the point. That doesn't matter. After all of this occurs, he's finally summoned back to the castle, but the king is pissed and demands him to reveal the secrets behind his abilities. But Naofumi refuses, saying that if he's not here to give him money to continue on with his duties, he'll just leave. He has things to work on anyways, and he doesn't need to deal with this. Naofumi goes to leave, but the royal guards try to stop him. Do you really think you can stop me with those weapons? Trust me, it's gonna be a bad day for you all. Naofumi just pushes them away and continues walking. The king basically says that he'll torture his other party members if he so chooses not to. But as he's saying, and as he's finishing that sentence, Naofumi turns and his aura flares up. This red aura appears around him and it engulfs the entire area. It feels like the devil is staring at him. Naofumi's pissed now. This aura that is behind him is this deep red. It seems like the anger is showing. And he's saying, and he begins to say that if he even tries to lay a hand on his teammates, on his party members, he'll tear this whole castle to the ground in an instant. He punches the ground and it basically vaporizes the entire ground that's in front of the king, and the king is in shock at the power that Naofumi can actually hold as the aura begins to dim and go back into his gem. He leaves. He's over this and says that he has things to handle. As he heads out though, he's approached by a woman covertly who warns Naofumi about the church of the three heroes. He grabs the little emblem that she gives him and says that he already knows that they're corrupt. It's pretty blatantly obvious. She says that there's more to it than just that, and to keep that in mind. Naofumi sees as she immediately disappears and leaves as well, thinking that he might have to crack this case on his own. But with all that done, he needs to leave. He needs to leave with his party, and they need to get to Shield Freedom so they can get their class upgrades. This is what matters now. He may be getting stronger exponentially at this point, and he'll be able to get stronger and stronger throughout this entire time, but his class or his partners are at a standstill, so they need to get to Shield Freedom as soon as possible. Naofumi and his party departs, but as this occurs, someone is en route to meet him, and it's Melty, who wants Naofumi to reconcile with the king, and Naofumi says that he can't do that, but he senses something. He senses malice, ill intent, he senses aggression. Why does he feel like that? Why does it feel that something's going to... He looks up to see Melty's bodyguards about to assassinate her, but Naofumi steps in front of it and shatters the blade immediately. You all really want to play this game? To kill the heir apparent to the throne? Wow, I didn't know you were this scummy. I knew you were scum, but this is a new low. Naofumi tells his party to surround the cart, surround everybody, and nobody is allowed to leave. These people cannot leave. And they listen to what he's saying. Raftalia goes right behind them, Philo goes at one side, and Ellie goes on the other. Ellie might not be able to strengthen much, but having a presence of another person on that side, that's all that matters. Naofumi steps forward and begins to beat down everybody so fast that it looks like it's a bunch of rookies. It looks like he's a karate master versus a bunch of white belts. He immediately just chops them down to size, knocking them all out cold. He ties them all up and immediately begins to question them, saying that he wants to know who sent them and who made this order, or else. Philo threatens, saying that she'll continue to bite one after another their heads off if they don't answer. Out of complete and utter fear, they decide to answer, and they say that mine sent them to assassinate Melty. Luckily, Ellie has something up her sleeve and has it for a while. She is a support magic type hero, and she has something that can record exactly what's going on. Very, very similar to the orb, or the glass orb that he sees early on in this story. She actually can do that on will with her staff. Recording this, getting this evidence is what matters to Ellie, and she doesn't even tell Naofumi this, but Naofumi decides that he's going to leave them all tied up and break whatever they have that they're going to use to either expose him or expose Melty. So they break the glass they have, or the orb they have, and this word of this doesn't necessarily get to the kingdom as soon as possible. He leaves them all there, but makes sure that they're bound really, really tightly, so it is going to be a struggle if they really want to get out, and they decide that they're going to leave once again. They head off to where they need to go. But while going through the mountains and getting deeper and deeper, it seems that the three heroes and the people of the kingdom found out of this quote-unquote kidnapping of Melty, and now he's some fugitive. But Melty explains, saying that that's not true and that she tried to get her assassinated. And actually Ellie has full proof of this, showing the other three heroes immediately. Ren and Itsuki immediately realize what's happening, that she's trying to play them for a fool, and they're not going to let her do that. So they step in front of Naofumi and they step in front of Melty, saying that it's time for them to leave right now. Naofumi hands something to Ren with no real answer and says that he's smart, he'll figure it out. They leave, and Ren and Itsuki stand in front of everybody else, not even letting them move. Motoyasu questions what they're doing, and he says that if Motoyasu could think for himself, or Ren and Itsuki say that if Motoyasu could think for himself, that he'd be standing with them right now. That video, that tape, the recording that they just heard is blatantly obvious that Melty was more or less tried to get assassinated, and that Mine is the person who tried to do this. And Motoyasu says that that's ridiculous, but with all that happening, everybody loses, or everyone that's hunting Naofumi loses him. But during this time, Naofumi decides to go to a certain place that he's able to be safe and okay initially. But with all that going on, someone shows up once again. A royal decree, someone that is a shadow for the queen, shows up and asks him to please go to the queen and that she wants to speak with him. And he explains that that's not going to happen. They need to get this all done and set over with. He needs to get his class upgrades. And she says that it's his choice overall. But when they head to Siltvelt, somehow they got a royal decree not letting Naofumi cross that border, which is a problem. So they decide that they're going to travel, according to Melty, to a nobleman by the name of Van Richnot, who rules over the area, and by surprise they are met by him and they let him in, and he's obviously informed of their situation and invites them to stay the night. But this was a bad idea for Richnot, because come dawn he's arrested, and well, the maids may hide Naofumi and Raphtalia, but he is arrested and Melty is taken with him. Naofumi is given this anxiety, is pissed, and he can see it in Raphtalia. She feels the exact same way. So they decide that they're going to save Melty, save Richnot, and save whoever else is in there. So they infiltrate the castle where Richnot is currently being tortured in front of Melty. And also, Naofumi can sense this amusement from this man, from Rabier himself, this amusement at beating somebody senseless. Naofumi is pissed, peeling him off and throwing him against the wall, untying Richnot, asking if he's okay. Raphtalia confronts Rabier and stands in front of him and trips him as he tries to get up and begins to beat him down, making sure that he's out cold. He's slightly, almost unconscious, but he pitifully begs for mercy, but Raphtalia is not going to give that. Why would she? Why would she decide to do such a thing? Ellie says that killing would not be the answer in this situation, that making him suffer would be. And Naofumi is confused to hear this. What do you mean suffer? How so? You'll see. I'll show you. Ellie walks up and places her staff on his head, and it begins to erase all the memories Richnot has and everything he's ever thought about. Immediately, he's confused. He doesn't know where he is, and he's terrified at the aspect that there's these people in his place and they have blades at his neck. And they realize what she did. She completely erased everything Richnot ever did. All the enjoyment that he had not there anymore. But also she added some other things, these horrible memories of himself being tortured, himself being hurt, and that's what he'll be traumatized with for the rest of his life. Luckily, Raphtalia is able to leave this place very, very quickly, but she actually finds some other things, or some other people. In fact, she finds, well, the dead body of one of her best friends, but also someone else that she knew when she was little, her old friend Keel. And this person, he's still alive. It's been months, maybe close to a year, and luckily he's still alive. And Raphtalia breaks down at the sight of him, but also the remains of her other friends who were just left to rot in this cell. She's sad. She feels like she abandoned them, but he even says that that's not true. Naofumi tells her to listen to her old friend, that abandonment is not what she did here. She survived, and he survived as well, and unfortunately the others didn't. But now that she is alive, she can carry on the legacy of the others. Raphtalia promises that one day they'll go home and that she'll rebuild everything. And Naofumi smiles and says that he'll be just by her side when he does just that, when she does just that. She smiles and hugs Naofumi, and they head off once again. But this time, there's no dragon monster, there is no Tyrannosaurus Rex that will try and kill Naofumi. It's a peaceful ending in this weird capital, and Rabier is stuck in his infinite loop of PTSD and trauma. But even with all that said, Philo gets a sense of something, hears someone. She says that they should go over to the lake, so they do. But Naofumi questions what she's talking about, what is even going on, until a girl comes out of the lake. I've heard stories about this. Is this the Lady of the Lake? Am I gonna get a sword or something? I'm actually confused. Naofumi is very, very in confusion at this point, very confused at this girl that looks like Philo, frankly. It just comes out of the lake like nothing, and she explains that she is the Filolio Queen, and that she wants to speak with them in her own domain if they don't mind. And he agrees, and they're immediately teleported to the Filolio Sanctuary in a faraway ruins. Naofumi, though, asks Victoria some questions, and what is the true nature of Philo? She explains that Philo, due to a hero raising her, has seen this extraordinary growth, and that's the case. She's only going to see that growth when they're with a hero. And he asks if that would be the case if he had any Filolio in his party, and she says more or less, but it also takes a proper connection. And Naofumi nods and asks what the Filolio Queen, Victoria herself, would want with him, and why is she bringing him here. Victoria asks some questions to him, though. Asks why are they only fighting in Melremark, because the waves are not just here, and Naofumi didn't even know this. Naofumi admits that he's not personally powerful enough at the moment to fight every single wave, but he would be out there fighting them if he knew about this. He didn't even realize. Victoria basically says that it's okay that he doesn't know, but it's good he knows now. Victoria explains that she's been protecting the other nations alone to fulfill the last wish of her hero, or the hero that raised her, but she knows that she will perish very soon. So she urges Naofumi to make amends with the other heroes. But even Naofumi says that the chances of this happening are pretty low. Ren and Itsuki, he can get behind. There's a good chance that will happen. But if we're talking about Motoyasu, there's a good chance that he will reject the idea. He explains everything that has occurred, and she begins to get emotional, thinking that there shouldn't be this clash between the heroes. And he explains that it all starts, well, with mine and the king. And it's that simple. They're trying to do some sort of sabotage, it feels. And Vittoria agrees that it does sound that way, but even with all that said, Vittoria says that the heroes need to unite. She doesn't know how he'll do it, but he needs to do it. So Naofumi says that he will try his absolute best, and he promises that he won't stop until he can. And she says that's all she wants, but there is something else that she needs to do, and if he's up for it, she'd like him to know before it occurs in the next morning. The next morning then arrives. Vittoria takes Melty hostage, and Naofumi tries to attack her but gets blasted away. And she says that she wants to test the convictions of Philo. How strong is Philo really? And Philo is outmatched in a battle, especially in their human forms, but luckily Philo is able to land a blow to break through Vittoria's magical defense, and she's satisfied. Vittoria names Philo as the successor, which grants her an insane amount of base stat increases. But not only that, she walks over to Naofumi and taps him on the chest, actually specifically where the gem is. She explains that there's something about it. He might be the unarmed hero or the martial arts hero, whatever he wants to be called, but there's something about a Filolial, something that he could learn from Filolials being fast, light on your feet. And he is confused to hear this and is asking if she's gonna train him or something, but she says no, that she's gonna tap. She basically has unlocked everything in terms of Filolials, and that he should be lighter on his feet when he's in this weird state. Actually, it seems to be more passive in terms of him, so it actually will work out pretty much better in a fighting scenario. She explains that he still will have the power he normally has, but he should be slightly faster, better, and he should have a floating like effect, and this should help him with his martial arts. And he actually begins to bounce around and says that he does feel really light on his feet, lighter than he's ever felt in his life. He thanks her and is confused at exactly how it even happened, but doesn't really question it. But with all that said and done, it's now time to go. It is now time to finally try to make peace with the heroes. So Vittoria sends him to the nearest hero nearby to start reconciling. But unfortunately, it's the hardest one. It's not Ren, it's not Itsuki, it's Motoyasu. And he refuses to listen. He accuses Naofumi of killing Ren and Itsuki, but Naofumi stops him right there. That doesn't even make sense. He wasn't even there. He hasn't been around them. So how would he kill him? And Malty affirms that the church found evidence against Naofumi that he killed Ren and Itsuki. And Naofumi clicks it all in his brain. You're kidding me. You realize the church is playing you for a fool. Mine, you're really messing up. And I think I just figured it all out. Mine laughs at this, saying that he's figured out nothing. Don't act like he's so smart. But as they're talking about this, Philo taps him on the shoulder and says that something big is coming. Something bad. That they need to move now. That it doesn't make sense for them to stay here. And his mages, Motayasu's mages, tried to encapsulate them to keep them near them so that their fight can begin. But Naofumi is able to break free the barrier, and he tells them that they need to move now. And if they don't move, that they'll die. So Naofumi leaves with his party, leaving them behind as well. And Motoyasu and Mine decide to decide to basically entertain this idea. So they run away with them. But as they do this, a crash of light slams into the ground, and if they didn't move in time, they all would have been dead. They walk back to the crater to see somebody standing on the top of the hill. It seems like the Pope has now turned, and he has the ancient weapon that replicates all four of the cardinal heroes. He explains that these false heroes don't deserve to live, and that he personally will kill them all, and he's personally already killed 2 of them, and then he'll take over this monarchy, and he will be the ruler of Melremark and then everywhere else. and this is not good. Now Fumi and Motoyasu are going to be forced to fight with each other, to basically defend against the Pope for the sake of their own parties and the sake of their own lives. And they begin fighting back as the Pope begins to launch blasts at them. And Rautalia asks, can't Naofumi absorb one of these blasts? But he says that they might be too strong, that if it lands on him cleanly, he'll definitely die. And it's not worth the risk right now, especially not in his max power form. And he doesn't even know how to activate that on will. Something would have to happen. They continue fighting, clashing with the Pope the best they possibly can. But right when everything seems to get dim, right when everything seems to be at a loss, Naofumi can sense something coming. Ren and Itsuki come out of nowhere, slashing at the Pope, helping the other two heroes, and they explain that the shadows were able to save them, luckily, and it won't be that easy to kill the heroes. While all four of the heroes stand in front of the Pope, it's time for them to, well, fight together. Naofumi says they need to reconcile, that all of this little fighting, bickering, it doesn't matter anymore. This is ignorant, that they need to fight together, especially to beat him and to beat the rest of the waves. Ren and Itsuki are on board with this idea. Motoyasu, though, on the other hand, says that they'll talk about it later, that let's just get this fight done and over with first. So that's what they start doing. The fight against the Pope finally begins. The real fight begins. But during this, they start getting enclosed in a battlefield inside a magical cathedral. This isn't good. It seems like the effectiveness of everything is kind of lower, but that doesn't matter. If Naofumi can just find a way to activate that state he was in, he'll be able to step up. He tries to focus on everything he's seen. The rage, the time that he saw Philo die, the attempted assassination of Melty. What would have happened if he didn't step in? Would she have died right in front of him? The threatening, the king threatening him to actually hurt his party members. As he thinks of this, an aura erupts around him once again, but this aura is different. This aura is a dark purple color. It seems like it's reacting off of the shard that is in his gem. It seems like it's reacting to Ren, and this power is even more powerful. It's stronger. It seems to be a 12 times boost instead of a 10. And Naofumi now stands in front of the Pope, and the rest of them are in complete awe. This seems to be even more powerful than they've ever seen. Naofumi goes charging at the Pope, landing actually a punch on him as he gets flown backwards. But the Pope says to activate more power, and that he doesn't care if the rest of them die, if the people that he follow him die. That killing these heroes is what matters now. The Pope decides that he's going to launch one final blast. One blast that will take out all of them in an instant. It will kill, maybe even slaughter so many of his people, but they know what they were in for. They know what true justice is. He begins to charge up the attack, and even the strength of the shield around him is stronger than even ever. No one can even break through. Now Fumi even struggles to even get near him. The blast is ready to come, and Rautalia looks at Naofumi basically in a way that basically tells him that there's only one way out of this. And he even knows there is. He puts his hands out and begins to focus the most power he's ever had in his life, ever had in this world. And he begins to think about everybody he cares about. Rautalia, Ellie, Philo, Melty, the people that have trusted him throughout the journey, the people of the villages, Loot Village, and the people he saved from the dragons, poison, and plague, to the people in that revolution that Itsuki made. Now Fumi knows that this is what matters. That everything that happens right now is all on him. The blast comes soaring at Naofumi and comes soaring at the rest of the heroes. He puts his hands out and it begins to get pushed back. Naofumi holds the blast as much as he possibly can, and he decides that he's going to absorb as much as he can. He begins to absorb it, and the Pope stares on in awe, thinking that he can't charge up another blast in time if he absorbs and parries the entire blast. Naofumi continues to absorb it. More power. More power. His aura begins to erupt even larger, covering everybody around him. Everybody is now protected from the blast, and he continues to absorb it, and his aura explodes, shattering the cathedral in its entirety. And Naofumi, in a blaze of anger, he's on top of the Pope, and he rips his head off. The Pope is now dead, and his followers follow along with him. The blast actually exterminated about 95% of his followers. That strong of a blast is just ripped him to shreds and almost would have killed the entirety of all their heroes. Naofumi jumps back down toward his party, and his aura dissipates. He collapses just as the Queen arrives with reinforcements to help. But luckily, Naofumi had it handled, and now all she has to do is evacuate them. She brings Naofumi back to a place for him to rest, in which he spends time recovering, eventually waking up, and Naofumi doesn't feel hurt, he just feels overexerted. Luckily, Ellie is a great healer and was able to bring him back relatively quickly. And the Queen is there and apologizes for all the troubles. The three-hero church, mine, the king, and Naofumi just shakes his head and says that all he cares about is the relationship he has with the other heroes. That's what matters now. Vittoria told me, that's what really does matter now. I need to be able to protect everybody, but without the help of the other heroes, it's practically impossible. The Queen kind of fangirls over this, saying that she didn't know he knew Vittoria. Like, that's amazing. And they all look at her strangely, and she kind of postures back up and apologizes for her actions. And Naofumi just smiles and says that it's just fine. He says that he doesn't care what they do with mine, and he doesn't care what they do with the king. He obviously wants everybody else from the Three Heroes Church completely arrested and put in jail, and maybe even the king and mine should be put in jail, but he frankly doesn't care that much. But he does care that they get punished, that he needs them to realize their mistakes, and she cannot be allowed to do such a thing ever again. And he makes this very clear, saying that that is what matters. If she is allowed to sabotage like that again, there's going to be very bad consequences. And the Queen agrees. So, mine is not allowed to be an adventurer, or at least she's going to have to go through various amounts of therapy to be an adventurer again. And the king is stripped of his royal title and has to do the same thing as mine, go through a bunch of rehabilitation. But luckily, the problem of mine and the king are subsided, at least for the moment. But will it truly be like that forever? Well, that's not so sure. But that's not the problem at hand, at least at the moment. Naofumi says that they do need to get their class upgrades, so that's what they go to do. After everything is settled with mine and the king, Naofumi heads to the Dragon Hourglass to receive his class upgrades, but it seems that the ritual fails. The Queen, though, explains that it might not have failed. It might have to do with Vittoria's blessing, and it's somehow interfering with it. And it seems that, well, Vittoria may have given them an even bigger boost, but at the cost of having that choice. And he says that does make sense. A 50% boost wouldn't have given all of them such a boost at this time. But as they talk about this, Rautalia realizes something. Master Naofumi, your level! And Naofumi looks to see that his level has skyrocketed from around maybe level 50 to an upwards of level 70. Naofumi realizes that when he absorbed that blast, his level skyrocketed. Even a blast like that from someone that may have not been a high level, the weapon was insanely powerful, maybe even far more powerful than all of them combined. So absorbing that blast gave him insane amounts of levels, and maybe that's what put him out of commission temporarily. The fact that he accelerated his experience points so much. The queen is happy to hear this. The fact that the unarmed hero or the martial arts hero is getting stronger and stronger at a rapid rate is something she is happy to hear. And now he's that much stronger than the other heroes, so it is pretty beneficial. She does remind him that they have a 4 heroes council meeting and that she does want to speak with all of them about some things. And that's exactly what happens. The 4 heroes have a private meeting while Raphtalia and the rest of his party hang out, eat food, and bully other people of their party members. The other heroes' party members, because, they're assholes. But that's beyond the point. They continue talking about other things and how they leveled up and gained XP, and they share their secrets the best they possibly can with limited bickering, but they do bicker a good little bit. With all that said though, the queen then reminds them and tells them of something by the name of a special event of Kalmyra, the archipelago event. This event will gain them all bonus experience points, giving them an opportunity to level up before the next wave. As she says this, all the heroes realize what level Naofumi is, asking what the hell did he do? And he said, did they already forget about his power? He was able to absorb the blast that the Pope shot at them, and they do remember that. Ren and Itsuki begin to say that maybe they can learn something of that magnitude as well, but the queen does question that that's probably wouldn't happen. She assumes it's a special ability of the martial arts hero. The fact that you learn so many styles, you learn inner peace, it seems like martial arts is definitely a way of absorbing something, and that would be a good reason why he's able to do that. And as you can see, normally he doesn't absorb an entire blast, he actually counters and parries the other half of it. But in this case, he was forced to absorb even more, putting him out of commission. And they actually are pretty surprised to hear this, and it kind of does make sense. And they say that they guess they can't have any easy way out, and that Naofumi is the only one that has an easy way out. And he shakes his head and just rolls his eyes and says that he'll see them at the Kalmyra archipelago event. Naofumi and his party board the Kalmyra boat and head to the archipelago event, and they actually meet Lark and Therese, people that he feels kind of an odd feeling for. It seems like they have this malice to them, but friendliness at the same time. It's kind of odd. There's no killer instinct, but there also is hostility within their emotions. He is very confused at how they're feeling, but he does greet them and explain that his name is Naofumi. And they say that, oh, he's one of the heroes. There's no way that he's one of the heroes. He just doesn't look the part. But Naofumi kind of ignores this, and he doesn't necessarily care, but he does just go along with what they're saying, and he kind of laughs about it. They then arrive at the resort inn, and the heroes' parties recover from seasickness, while Naofumi goes off to XP grind with his party. They basically ask him if it's really even appropriate for him to be training, and he explains that he can kind of power level them now. They helped him a ton power leveling initially, so now they can go to the hardest place, and he's sure that he'll be able to handle it and power level all of them to close to his level. Maybe not on his level, but definitely close. So that's what they do. They go to the hardest place they can possibly find with the highest levels, and they begin to kill every monster in sight as quick as possible. Naofumi also tries to use his aura form, which he can only really get his red aura to appear, not a dark red aura and not his purple or dark purple aura that he got to be exposed when he fought the Pope. But that's not really the main problem. He doesn't really care about all that. At this point, he's a high enough level, and training will just top off any feeling he can get in terms of using it. The next couple days, they fight monster after monster after monster until their levels kind of start petering off and plateauing. The rest of his party is at a level of 55. Well, Philo's 55, Raphtalia 55, and Ellie unfortunately is at a 50. She can't fight herself, so she is limited in terms of leveling, and Naofumi is at a level of 75. He explains that it's now time to definitely take a little bit of a break. They've been training basically non-stop for a while now, so they decide to head to the beach. They begin relaxing and just hanging out as Philo is exploring the underwater, and she comes across this undersea temple. She comes basically swimming as fast as possible out of the water and explains to Naofumi that they need to check this out right now. So they do. They check out this giant sea temple to find out that there's a dragon hourglass at the bottom of it. It seems like it's connected to Kalmyra somehow, and the next wave is due at Kalmyra in only 48 hours. Learning of this, they immediately come soaring out of the water, and Naofumi says that he needs to teleport to the queen and tell her of what's happening. He teleports back to the kingdom and warns the queen about all of this happening, and she says she will amass a naval fleet and basically amass the largest one she possibly can. She sees that Naofumi is actually growing still pretty quickly, even with being a high level, and she says that with him there, they should be just a-okay. He smiles and says he hopes so. They all then head back to Kalmyra, and 48 hours is as quick as just a couple hours. Immediately, it's now time for them to face the wave. While the Navy will fight the smaller creatures, the 4 heroes will fight the boss monster. It should be easy enough, at least hopefully. Eventually, the sea creatures show up, the naval units begin to fight it, and the other heroes, the spear, the bow, and the sword begin to fight the bigger giant fish, the giant boss monster. Naofumi steps in, landing a critical blow on top of the monster, and he realizes he killed it. It's already dead. Naofumi didn't necessarily realize how strong he actually is, and this is even without his, well, aura-like form. Is just the 2.5x boost for his attack speed and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, Naofumi is extremely powerful, especially in just his base form, but he didn't expect himself to be that powerful. The wave, of course, have given them a lot of trouble, so the fact that he was able to one-shot a boss monster is something he's surprised about, but he does expect some other challenges to show up. And just as he thinks of this, Lark and Therese show up on the monster with him. Raphtalia, Ellie, and Philo join him, and they stare daggers into them. You knew I knew the entire time, right? I mean, it was pretty blatantly obvious. I can tell by your emotions. They spike in certain areas. You feel hostility, but also kindness at the same time. You don't have this murderous intent, but you definitely have this idea that you want to hurt somebody. Are you a murderer, Lark? Therese? Are you good people? Because we don't need to do this, but if I have to protect my world, I will protect it. Therese and Lark are shocked to hear this, shocked to hear that that Naofumi already figured this out, that he figured out that they're part of the other world with glass. Naofumi has a hunch for these type of things, that he can figure it out relatively easily, that the wave has never shown to have a human or someone with a special weapon, so why would it now? He knows that it's blatantly obvious that the waves are a portal to another world, and they confirm this. They confirm that there's this place that they go to, which is their world, that they need to protect, and that their heroes need to die now. Therese and Lark attack Naofumi, but Naofumi's aura erupts, and they can't even get by his aura. Are you sure about this? Are you sure you want to go through with this? And Therese and Lark are shocked to see this, that how powerful is he exactly? Is he really that strong? Glass shows up as well and says that she will handle Naofumi, that they need to handle the other people. And Glass smirks at Naofumi, and Naofumi basically just slams her into another boat and dashes over to where she is. You're pretty cocky, Glass, taking me on one-on-one. I hope you have a plan this time. a really good one. Because if you didn't get stronger, I promise I did. Glass begins to say that she definitely got stronger, and they'll both see who stands a true chance. Naofumi begins to fight Glass in his normal form, and they seem relatively even, and Glass continues to turn up the pace, and she seems to start to outpace Naofumi. Naofumi's power, though, continues to rise. It feels like he's getting stronger and stronger throughout the battle. Even Glass is shocked to see this. Glass doesn't know what's happening. What's going on? What is this power he's showing? And his aura erupts. A red aura appears around him, and it seems like he's now outpacing Glass tenfold. It's not even a close match anymore. The fight isn't even close by any means. Naofumi is winning by a long shot. Every blast Glass shoots at him gets swiped away. Every strike with her fan gets flicked back to her. And every time she tries to close the distance to do anything, she gets flipped on her back and pinned to the ground. Naofumi has won this match and has won it very convincingly. Lark and Therese see this and try to jump in, getting away from Raphtalia, Ellie, and Philo for the moment and try to attack Naofumi, but his aura alone stops them. And it basically just keeps them in place, and he slams them on, obviously, to the ship that they're currently on. He looks at all three of them and tells them that it's their time to leave, that he'll give them one more chance, that's all that he'll give them. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter. This world is what he cares about, and frankly, if they're going to continue to threaten it, he will not hesitate next time to kill them. But maybe to refigure out their idea of saving their own world. Maybe there's another way. And if there isn't, then he'll be waiting. He'll be waiting when they come back stronger to fight him once again. And he'll be excited. He may want to protect his world, but as a true martial artist, he likes a challenge. And right now, they are not that challenge he wants. He lets them go and they stare in complete awe. Is this person even real? What is going on? Naofumi begins to walk away as the wave begins to drag them away. They ask Naofumi what's wrong with him. Why would he give up an advantage like this to not save his world, to not just kill them off and then the problems would go away? He looks at them and says that killing is not always the answer. It's only of means when it's critical, when it needs to happen. He feels that it doesn't need to happen now. They can figure this out, and he hopes they will come back, but not as enemies, as allies. And maybe one day they can figure out how to save all of their worlds. They disappear into the wave, and Glass, Lark, and Therese now have something to keep in mind. Naofumi is now standing there with his party standing around him, and they celebrate the end of the wave, the end of what seems to be the current combat, at least for now. They head back to the kingdom, and the queen thanks Naofumi, rewards him handsomely, and even says that she has what he seeks. And he smiles, thanking her, and taking his party to Raphtalia's old village, showing that he has lordsmanship over the village and that he'll rebuild it, just like how Raphtalia wanted, and that they'll do it together. Ellie, Raphtalia, and Philo, all happy to hear this, especially Raphtalia and her friend Keel. Now their village can come back to its former glory, and the person protecting it, the martial arts hero Naofumi Iwatani, will protect it with his life, and it will be protected forever.